I'll pause a moment to let everyone join in. Thank you for joining us. I know if you're a parent here, you're probably very busy, so thanks for making time for this. I'll go ahead and give a little brief introduction about the Montessori Thrive parenting series. We host this every February and October as just a space for parents to come together and learn, because I know that, if you're whether you're enrolled in a Montessori school now or you're thinking about enrolling in a Montessori school now, part of that is parent education and making sure that you have the support. So we hope that these parenting series offer a little bit of extra information on parenting and some additional support. So thank you for joining us. The way that these work is usually, the presentation will last a good chunk of the hour. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions you want to ask our speaker at the end of this, you can feel free to unmute yourself. You can also utilize the chat if anything pops to mind while Michelle is presenting tonight. But ultimately, we're just going to share this presentation with you guys and then have a little bit of Q&A at the end. I'll go ahead and briefly introduce our speaker. Today, we're being joined by Michelle Tovar. Michelle is a certified parenting coach and a Montessori educator for over 20 years. She's also the proud owner of Practical Life Parenting, where she helps overwhelmed parents who are exhausted from the power struggles gain cooperation from their children using effective communication. She guides parenting partners to strengthen relationships and bring more peace and joy into their homes. She's here tonight to share her presentation on the path to peaceful parenting. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Michelle. Go ahead and take it away, Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I'm here to help you discover more peace and connection and confidence as a parent. So let's get started. Many, parents know that they want to do things differently than maybe they were parented, or, they just want more peace, or maybe even break some generational patterns of yelling or wounding. So today, my goal is to give you some very actionable, different perspectives on thinking about how you're engaging with yourself and also with your children and your home environments. I personally have loved working with children. I started off as a babysitter at the age of 12 through about 18, 19, and then I eventually became a Montessori teacher. So my passion for children has always been my driving force to really just make the world a better place. And what I believe that kids need now more than anything is adults that are actively working on their own emotional and behavioral regulation. And I really believe in my heart that the best way to do this is by giving adults the tools of personal growth and transformation. Can everyone see my slides okay? Oops, I went too far. Sorry about that. I came to parent coaching after teaching in the Montessori environment for over 22 years. I taught in the primary classroom and the elementary classroom. I just found that the methodologies of all the trainings that I have taken are just so aligned. And I always seem to be drawn to learn more skills around child development and all things social and emotional. And I had the opportunity to practice that in my classroom for so many years, just really looking at the needs of the whole child and meeting them, where they're at, and preparing the environment and modeling grace and courtesy and respect for others and self. And, I always just felt, though, that there was a need to learn how I could better support parents with the challenges of modern day parenting. And so, as Camila mentioned, I work with many different family dynamics. But a common trend that I see in parents is just feeling completely exhausted and overwhelmed with the daily, power struggles that they face. And so what I do is I help parents gain more cooperation from their children by using effective communication tools and learning more skills around emotional intelligence for all members of the family. And I guide parenting partners to strengthen relationships and bring more peace in their homes. My biggest growth partners, I would have to say, are my three children. Just being a mom myself has allowed me such a wonderful opportunity to grow and learn so much about myself and really how I was carrying things from my past and my parenting past and projecting them onto my children at times. And so it was always been important for me to build a close connection with my boys, while fostering their uniqueness and individuality. But the reality was, as a young mom, I couldn't always access that presence and peace that I wanted for them, even with my trainings and my experience working with children. I had fears, I had worries, I had challenges of juggling everything and feeling overwhelmed. Um, but what I have discovered over time and just really doing some inner work with myself is that I just needed to learn to be in more of a relationship with my children and create a cooperative environment where we come up with solutions together. I don't pretend to know more about what they need or what they want. I don't need to punish them or give them harsh consequences. I've never used sticker charts or reward systems. I just believe that when we give children the space to express their feelings and their needs, and they're met with in cooperative ways, those big behaviors kind of go out the window. They're just really not necessary. I feel like children, they really want that love and connection and that peace that we want as well. And so I'm really excited to share this path with you because I really feel like it raises leaders that are able to speak against injustices and in the world, and when they're not shamed or scared into the behavior, they just really become the leaders of our future. And so what I want to do, I want everyone to just get comfortable, feel free to close your eyes and let's take some deep breaths together. I just feel like we don't take the time to really connect and ground ourselves sometimes when we're so busy and we have the to-do list and being pulled in different directions. So let's do that right now together. Go ahead and take a deep breath in through your nose and out your mouth. Do a couple more breaths. And I want you to just think about what makes a good parent. How will you know, hey, I did a good job. I did a great job raising my child. What skills do you, hope to see in your children as successful young adults? Okay, you can open your eyes. What we do know, though, is that humans follow what they see more than what they hear. Does anyone have any idea why or what that comes from? You can unmute yourself or put in the chat. Any idea why we follow more of what we see than what we hear? Okay, it's okay. Oh, I got something in the chat. Children observe more than they listen. Pack animals, my husband says. Learn by example. Very good. Awesome. So the reason is because of mirror neurons. So mirror neurons reflect our emotions and our feelings. It's kind of like when you're having a conversation with someone and their feelings are high, they're expressing themselves, and you find yourself matching them. This is, Maria Montessori based her educational methodology on human development. And she believed that mirror neurons pruned throughout the brain's development of a child confirm the idea that children learn best through their environment, really by absorbing and observing and repeating. So Maria Montessori, wise woman, discovered this over 100 years ago through observation. And it was later confirmed by a neuroscientist in the early 90s. And so Maria, she also believed in the prepared environment, but she also believed in the prepared adult. And so when the adult is able to access the presence in themselves, and they're, really prepared for any situation. And so because the parents are the child's first community unit, you can really see the impact that parents have on their child's development. And so are we modeling the skills that we hope our children develop by the time they're a young adult? And the reason I say a young adult is because when we are born, the only organ that's not fully developed at birth is the brain. So our lungs, our kidneys, our heart is completely developed, but the brain, the human brain, does not completely develop until about the age of 25, 26. And so when you think about that young adult, that is a person with a fully developed brain. And so since you're here, you could be doing anything on a Wednesday night. I'm guessing you want what's best for your family and for your children. Maybe you want more fulfilling moments with your children and less frustrating ones. And so what I want to do today is give you a path to actually take everything you've known, everything you've read and experienced in your life. Because one thing I know about coaching is that, just reading about it doesn't mean the transformation happens. And sometimes because we follow leaders online or we've read all the books, we end up kind of feeling a little like worse about ourselves. And so, really for generations, parents have asked the same question: how do I get my kid to listen to me? How do I get them, how do I get out the door on time? Or how do I get my teenager to stop ignoring me? And I really believe that we've reached a point in evolution. We've had so much information on child development, so much information on emotional intelligence. And so I really feel like it's time to really shift that question. And so that is really the work that I set out to do when I left my classroom and became a parenting coach. It's really more about instead of asking the question, how do I get children to behave? How do I change the behavior of another person? The question that we lovingly ask adults, a question I ask myself every day is, how can I, as a mom, as a dad, as a caregiver, an educator, how can I grow in the name of raising? How can I grow as a person in the name of raising a better person? Because essentially, when we turn the mirror around and we look at our roles a little bit differently, a lot begins to shift, and it does so quickly. And it really doesn't matter how old the kids are. I have clients who have, children that are babies. I have, school age and all the way to teenage. So it really has less to do with the children and more to do with the adult leaders in their lives. And so to continue on, if you have a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, grab it. If not, just maybe make a little mental note. I love to just, take a minute here and ask some diagnostic questions. I really believe that it takes so much courage and so much bravery to actually be willing to look at how your own reactivity or communication style or maybe inconsistent expectation of children is kind of showing up. And so, it's easier to say, oh, it's the child, it's my middle child, or they're just challenging. But I'm just going to invite a lot of grace and compassion as we start to really talk about some of these things. And so on a scale of 1 to 5, we're just going to rank ourselves really with a lot of self-love and a lot of gentleness and a lot of grace, because, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect parents. So number 1, I always live up to the expectations of behavior that I ask of my kids. 1 to 5. So 5 being really good. I actually live into the values and expectations and rules I set for my children. I know for me, I can share personally, a big one is my phone. So, I'm always asking specifically my teenagers, to get off the phone when we're having a conversation. Definitely no phones during mealtime. But boy, do they call me out when they see me doing the same. And so, I always live up to the expectations and behavior that I ask of my children. Go ahead and rate yourself 1 to 5. Number 2, my relationships with my partner, my family, my friends, and coworkers meet the dreams that I have for future relationships I want for my children. So the parent-child relationship really sets the foundation for every relationship that child will have in their life. And I know that that's a lot of pressure, but when you really look at it, it's because of the relationship. And I teach this deeply in my program. It creates an attachment style of a human being. And so there's a disorganized attachment and there's an insecure attachment. And many of us were, often raised without that secure attachment. And that's where a lot of the toxic relationship patterns and it's where people pleasing comes from, where codependency comes from. It's all rooted from that primary parent-child relationship. And so when you look at the relationship you have in your life, your relationships, I should say, are they a living, breathing example? Not perfect, but growing into what you hope your children will experience. Go ahead and rate yourself. Number 3, I'm able to express and communicate big emotions, so anger, fear, grief, without harming myself or others or stuffing them inside my body. I use the word somatic coaching, somatic body rather, and I do a lot of somatic coaching in my work. And what that means is simply the actual physical sensation when we experience that we experience in our body. And so it might sound something like, when you feel angry, what do you feel? And it's not the story that you're telling yourself about why you're angry, because a lot of us, are used to processing things with a narrative. And so as a coach, what we do is we get, in front of it and drop people in the physical experience of the emotion. So it might sound like, when I'm angry, I feel heat in my face. I feel my temperature rising. My body is clenched up. And so when you're feeling your feelings, are you stuffing them down and not letting yourself feel them? Or are you expressing them in a way that is harmful? And so, it's really telling, but recent research shows that the impact of yelling on a child's brain development is equally impactful as spanking. And so when we think about harming another person, we think physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. Are we chipping away at their confidence, at their self-worth, at their right to have a voice? I really believe that's why the world is so harsh these days. It's because everyone, is so disconnected with their feelings and haven't learned how to express them in a non-violent way. And so number 4, I'm making an impact on my work or the way I spend my time, the way I want my kids to when they grow up. So are you walking your walk and talking your walk? And number 5, my actions and decisions and choices are driven by my internalized compass of values of integrity versus what other people think or want. I believe that's the reason why so many adults are so inconsistent and erratic and confused and overwhelmed, because they're looking for external validation. And someone says go this way and they go this way, and then someone says go that way, and no, you have to discipline this way. And so, the children are kind of just left at the end of this rope that's whipping around. And it's very common, but it really doesn't have to be this way. When we find confidence in ourselves, we really start to care less about what other people think, because we know our children are thriving and they've been given the space to learn and to grow and to make mistakes. And it's not a reflection on us. And so, if we really stop and think about, if children model behavior, and we all have those mirror neurons that we spoke about earlier, the way, children are mirroring the way their parents are responding to the world, to life, to challenges, to feelings, to other people in relationship, then doesn't it make sense that we do the work on becoming the person we want our children to eventually be? We parents, need to realize that although it's never too late, it's definitely never too early to really reflect and do that personal growth. So I want to open it up. Would anyone like to share which number or numbers they feel they have room to grow, and why? And feel free to unmute or write it in the chat, whatever's easier. And don't be shy. This is a safe space. There's no judgment. We are all learning and growing together with our children.
Michelle, this isn't a question, but I think the right side of your slides aren't showing, like the text cuts off. I'm not sure if maybe
the text is cutting off. Oh, wow.
A little bit, like just the right side is getting cut off. Better? Yes. Yeah.
That's okay. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Here in the chat, I need to work on number 1. I'm probably a 3 because of being on my phone and working and emailing after hours. Another one says, I think number 3 is the hardest for me.
Right. So someone said number 1, living the expectations of what you asked, the technology piece. And that's a tough one, because we're all competing with this machine, right? This machine that is part of our reality, of our generation. And we're evolving with this machine. And the machine, and I call it the machine, does cause some stress with, screen time boundaries. There's a lot of parenting issues that might arise from it. And modeling the boundaries for your children is so important. And so if there's a certain time where the screens go on a dock, or, I know for me, the screens are stored in my bedroom, and children do not have access after a certain time. And so whatever you sit down and kind of work into your family ecosystem, as far as what the boundaries are around screens, that can be very helpful. But I understand your struggle with you also having that, that interactive time with the screen, and being able to put it down for work and dedicate that time with your children. I think really just being, intentional with your time with your children is going to help them see that's a tool. It's a machine, but it's not really kind of driving us in our family. And then I believe the other one was 3. I'm able to express and communicate my big emotions, fear, anger without harming myself. Would anyone like to elaborate on that one? My big feelings in a more safe and positive way. So when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed and you're under resourced, you're maybe resorting to the yelling, or you're unable to kind of regulate yourself and notice what your needs are before reacting, before slipping into that reactivity. And I think that is one thing I do a lot in my program, is just learn how to track your nervous system when you're slipping out of that social engagement, and how to kind of hit that pause button before spinning into reactivity. And a lot of that has to do with what we're going to talk about in a minute, but the kind of the way you're wired, the way your subconscious mind kind of goes to, from the way you were parented. Someone says, number 4, I'm modeling a meaningful professional life in the work I do. So it's easy to do a lot of it, but I need to model work-life balance more, and leisure and joy. Definitely. So it really goes by in a blink. My 16-year-old just got his driver's license 2 weeks ago. And before I could just remember him being 6, 7, 8 years old. Like, I felt like it was yesterday. And so having those moments, those joyful moments of playing with your children, doing games, having those connection times to connect, is so important in building that work-life balance. And I get it. I understand you have things to do. You have a lot, work pulling you one direction, the to-do list pulling you in other directions. But being intentional, setting goals, and building intentions around them to just be present, it really doesn't, if you can dedicate 15 minutes to your child and build off of that per day, it's really going to help in the long run. Those little smaller moments will in the end kind of build into a bigger shift for you. Sorry, I kind of skipped around here, didn't I? Someone said, number 2, how do you model ideal relationship when certain extended family dynamics are continually challenged? I totally understand how family members can have opinions and put their 2 cents in, whether that's how you're parenting or how you're interacting. And there are some things you can't control, right? There's some things that um, you have to just show your children how to communicate, how to solve problems, how to find resolution to conflicts with people in a nonviolent expression. And so, you've probably heard of like when people slip into reactivity, they go into fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of time when people freeze, that's when they don't talk to family members for several years, or they kind of ignore each other's feelings. And modeling that is not a healthy way to show your children how to resolve problems. And so if there is a conflict in the family or something that your children are kind of watching, modeling conflict resolution and how to talk with a nonviolent expression, I would say would be something to focus on, because even if it's not a perfect resolution, or it's not in the sense of what you hope and dream for your child, at least you are showing them how to kind of work through those situations that are difficult in a more positive way. Someone says, I feel like I need to work on all five. I first of all, I want to thank you all for just really taking the time to reflect and look deep. And we all have room to grow. No one here is perfect. There is no perfect parent. We are all here doing the best with the tools that we have, the tools that were given to us from our parents and the generations before that. And so it's important to just kind of reflect and look at, well, what are some areas I can really intentionally work on? Um, okay, I'm going to keep going with my slides, if that's okay. And then if there's any questions, feel free to stop me at any point. So there's a missing link. We've talked about how, sometimes we intently want to do something differently, but then we yell, we snap, we lose our temper. And the reason we do that is it has everything to do with our subconscious conditioned patterns of behavior. And so, you can try to willpower yourself to a certain extent. I think I read somewhere it's like you have 2 hours of willpower, to do per day, and the rest you're really left to your defenses. You're left to your old conditioning, and it's because it's not because we don't love our children. It's not because we're a bad people or ineffective. It's because we have this truth that we live in, which is that 95% of actions and behaviors are driven by the subconscious mind, especially when we're under resourced, meaning we're stressed, we're tired, we're hungry, we're overwhelmed. You can only willpower yourself to a certain extent, and then you will revert to those programmed patterns of behaviors of the subconscious mind. And so what's driving this, the actions that we take 95% of the time is informed by our own childhood experiences and our beliefs and worldviews. It's kind of like the operating system built on our past, and it's not really wired to create the future that we want. It's really wired to protect us from struggles and failures and fears, or even trauma of the past. And that's good if it's like our warning system. If we're hiking and a wild animal jumps out, like our subconscious mind knows what to do, but it's really not quite smart in preparing the future that we want. And so we essentially see our children and really all of life through this distorted lens of our past experiences and our fears and our disappointments and our conditioning. And it's kind of like how two people can be driving in the same vehicle, having the same experience, but one is admiring the beauty outside, the sunset, the trees, and the other one is like, oh my God, the traffic, these drivers are terrible. Same experience, but different perspectives and distortion. And so because most adults haven't done the work in rewiring the subconscious patterns, because maybe they haven't reconciled with their own parenting past, or they haven't learned to speak the language of feelings and needs, basically all their stuff is just spilling. It's just coming up and spilling all over the kids. And it's not because they're bad. It's not because they don't love their children. They have the best intentions. It's just because that's how humans work. And so children, through no fault of their own, who are innocent, who rely on adults for safety, security, protection, mentoring, guidance, unconditional love, bear the brunt of adults' insecurities, and unhealthy relationship communication patterns. But we don't have to stay there. And I quite frankly feel like our children now more than ever deserve better. And so the way that we do that is to really embody a growth mindset. And so, like I said earlier, it takes a brave and bold adult to be willing to say, how can I change in the name of change? What do I need to do to learn and grow to the best version of myself, or to the children I'm around? And so, I really feel like it has less to do with the children and more to do with the adult who's willing to do that personal growth in the name of the children. And so growth mindset really invites us to take a step back and have like a beginner's mindset, and acknowledging with compassion, there are areas I can improve around communication and emotional expression. And just let it be okay to make mistakes and try new things. And that's very different, because I don't know how you guys were raised, but my dad, it was my dad's way or the highway. I love him to death. He had really good intentions. He had a lot of trauma in his life, and he wanted to protect me from this evil world. But in his mind, I was not able to make decisions for myself. And so that's a very fixed mindset. And so the bottom line is, we can't give our children what we can't give ourselves. And if we don't love ourselves unconditionally, we can't love them unconditionally. And if we don't provide validation to ourselves, they're not going to believe it when we provide them validation. And so I'm going to share some human core needs in just a moment, but it's really interesting how things start to shift when we stop looking for things on the outside to give us what we've had the whole time. And so, these are the core human needs that we all share, whether you're a baby, a child, a teenager, an adult, someone at the end of their life. We all have these in common. And so safety is our physiological need for shelter, food, water, emotional well-being. Variety is the need for excitement, unique experiences, and access to information and change. Validation is the desire to be seen, understood, and appreciated by others. Significance is knowing that we matter and are important to others. Connection is that we can give and receive love and feel that we belong to a community. Autonomy is the big one for teenagers. Owning the choices and decisions that we make for ourselves. Growth is the desire to do better, learn more, and gain expertise in the area that matters most to us in our life. Contribution is being of service to others and making the world a better place. And so just to make a distinction here, these are the human core needs, not, I need a new iPhone or I need a new outfit. And, we're talking about giving children access to their core human needs as much as possible. And in an ideal world, we're able to do this all the time. But of course, that's not always feasible. But the magic piece here is that we have to actually give these things to ourselves first. And so, we're going to look at this parenting child thing through a different lens, because one of the foundational principles is that all behavior, whether it's good behavior, bad behavior, is an expression of a need, and whether that need has been met or unmet. And so I'm going to say it again. You might want to write it down. All behavior, good or bad, is an expression of a need, one of those core fundamental needs that we all share, and whether that need has been met or unmet. And so we can see how, this plays out. We're all kind of living in this pool of unmet needs. And so this is why coaching is so powerful, because I have the opportunity to give people, the chance to feel seen and heard and experience real empathy and significance and connection and autonomy And so they get to grow. And because most of us are not getting many of these things much of the time. And so what happens, in this swirl of unmet needs, children are not getting their needs met, adults are not getting their needs met. And so, if we look at this through the child to the adult, when the child's needs are unmet, whether it's for connection or maybe autonomy, maybe they want a little longer leash than we've been giving them, their behavior starts to escalate, right? And so they're basically yelling with their actions that they have a need that's not being met. And when children start to escalate, even when they're a teenager, we, the adult, feel our nervous system dysregulating, and then we become emotionally reactive. And because we're desperate, we want them to stop, we want relief. And so we snap, we yell, we threaten, we send them away, we don't let them go out on a Friday night, we take away their favorite toy or their iPad, or we leave them in the room. And so essentially, we revert to a power over stance. Stop this right now. But this is the moment, to really recognize here that we are taking action to get our needs met. And so the child encroaches through their behavior on our needs, and we're reacting to get our needs met. So then what happens? The child pulls away because, they don't want to be sent away. I remember I went to a Catholic school up to 8th grade. I remember my teacher, when she would yell at me, it was Sister Pauline, because we had to have our socks up. And I just felt it just was so crushing. Children don't want to feel that. And so they go into disconnection. And then what happens is parents start to feel guilty. And so they try to woo them back. And so they essentially revert into a power under parenting. And so, when we try to justify why we reacted that way, we begin to feel guilty. We feel worried. We feel shameful. We feel scared because the connection with our child has been withdrawn from us. And so really, this is a cycle of frustration that many families are unfortunately stuck in. And so, my work as a coach is to really break this pattern. And I'm going to show you a model in just a moment. But I want to share a quick story. My oldest son was probably 7 or 8 years old, and his uncle had bought him a skateboard for Christmas. And his personality, he still has always been very determined when he's learning a new skill. So he was learning how to balance and push himself on the skateboard. And one day he decided to bring the skateboard inside the house. And I wasn't aware. I was in the other room. I didn't know that he was going to do that. And I just heard a loud crash, a loud bang. And so I walked into the room and I saw him laying flat on his back, and across the room was skateboard inside the wall. There was like a huge hole in my wall. And so I reacted. I went over and I said, "What is wrong with you thinking that you could do this in the house? There's a big hole in the wall now, and we have to fix it because you were careless. Give me the skateboard and go to your room." So I clearly did not handle that situation well. I shamed him by saying, "What's wrong with you?" Then I blamed him for being careless. And then I punished him by sending him away and taking away his skateboard. So who can tell me, what was I modeling? What was I teaching? What skill was I um, showing my child in that moment? Nothing, right? We have something. Failure and mistakes are to be avoided. Yes. So after I took a moment to myself to calm down, I went to him and I asked him if we could talk. I said, Giovanni, I want to apologize for yelling at you and overreacting. Mommy did not handle that well. I was completely surprised when I saw you laying on the ground and I noticed the hole in the wall. But I know how hard you've been working on learning how to skateboard. And I realized, we probably should have discussed ahead of time where the best place for you to practice would be. Do you want to help me think of some good places to skateboard to where you can feel safe, or maybe have something to hold on to? He said, yes, mommy. Maybe you can walk with me and I can hold on to you. So what skills do you think I was modeling with the redo conversation, with the repair conversation I had with him? Someone says probably how you were parented. Yes, I come from a family of yellers. So yes, that was my default pattern. And it's something I continue to work on for sure. Showing how parents make mistakes too, compassion, problem solving, how to apologize, owning and learning from mistakes, humility, preparedness, cooperation, connection, address mistakes and work together. So way more skills, right? Way more skills than the first go around. So repair is okay. It's okay to show your that's part of the growth mindset. It's okay to admit to your child that you've made a mistake and let's repair it. Someone said drywall work. Yes. Yes. Well, we had tape on there for a little while, and then he did help his father repair it. So that was part of the natural consequence. So the compassionate view to understand here is that whether you sometimes resort to power over or power under in your parenting or interactions with your children, just, just know that they're ineffective coping mechanisms. They really are. And, essentially what we're unconsciously doing, not knowing what we're doing, is asking our kids to behave in a way that doesn't upset us, right? That doesn't make us uncomfortable, that makes it less annoying for us as parents. And, but with all the love in my heart, that's not their job. That's ours. And so my invitation to my clients is really to work and consider turning their focus away from the behaviors of their children just, for a hot minute. It's like you've been driving this scary parenting wheel. Peel your fingers off of the scary wheel and just with a lot of love, turn the mirror around and focus on your own leadership growth and personal development. And, it's really an extraordinary thing because as adults shift their internal beliefs and learn new ways to express their feelings and communicate their needs without shaming, blaming, or guilt, and it's guided by family values, everything begins to change for the children. I hear this a lot from my clients that are like 2-3 weeks into my program. They're like, oh my gosh, everything's shifting. And they're like, it's a miracle. And I'm like, it's not really a miracle because it makes perfect sense that when we learn these things, our children want to cooperate. They want that peace and love too. So it really just starts with you. So when adults do the work of transforming themselves, you can start seeing your children through a clear lens and allow them the space to be children, to find their own sea legs, to take risks, to fail, to make mistakes, and have it not be a reflection on you. Because really, our children are are separate from us. They have their own path, their own journey. And a lot of times as parents, we want to protect them from our experiences, but it doesn't mean our experiences will be theirs. And so, here's how this works, because it doesn't just change. In order to, apply these sorry, I just saw a blue line on the thing. It distracted me. In order to apply these skills that we teach as parent coaches, parents really have to do some work. And so making peace with parenting past, replacing old limiting beliefs with new empowered ones, gaining emotional competency, learning to self-regulate your own nervous system, and then co-regulating. Children will actually borrow. This is something I teach in my program, is anchoring and co-regulating. So when you anchor as the adult with fully developed brain, your child, if they're having a big storm, will actually borrow from your calm. They will co-regulate. And this happens into the late teens as well. Becoming skilled communicators in the language of feelings and needs, establishing family values, goals, agreements to guide decisions, and accessing play, joy, and wonderment and curiosity. And so if you really look at, if you really look at traditional parenting, right, the old game of how probably many of us were parented, and how much of the world still judges your success as a parent is through this idea that we have to condition our children to exhibit acceptable behaviors and achieve certain goals, right? Like make the best sports team and go to the best schools and have the best grades, and that's all based on what? On society's cultural family expectation. That's really a power over, in a nutshell, like you will conform to the expectations, versus the transformational game is what we embrace as the role of parents or even educators, to being more of a mentor, a guide, a leader, not the owner, but we're going to help our children develop an intrinsic motivation. And so intrinsic motivation is the driving desire to do the right thing, even when nobody's watching. And this is, instead of based on what other people think, or what the world tells us, right? And so instead of responding with reactivity and punishments and consequences, we are teaching to the values through communication. And so with this foundation, we can, embrace strategies. The question's always the same, how do I get my kids to stop ignoring me? How do I get my boys to stop roughhousing? How do I get my teenager to talk to me? And I always just respond by saying, take a deep breath, because you don't. At the end of the day, whether you like it or not, they are their own person. And we can make them do things at a relational cost. That's why that framework leaves many of us feeling so burnt out, and disconnected. And so we're here to build a new model where connection is more important, where cooperation is the culture of the family ecosystem, versus everyone's needs kind of being at odds with each other. And so, with that, the path to more peace and cooperation, it's really teaching. So the word discipline means teaching. So teaching, from clearly articulated, discussed values and goals versus fear and control. It's working with our children to teach them to regulate their own nervous system. Like I said earlier, they actually need co-regulations until they're in their late teens, because of their brain development. And so we allow children to increase their autonomy over time. We're not going to clamp down on them when, they're wanting to be more independent. That just kind of creates resistance and rebellion. We're going to make the leash a little bit longer and longer and allow them to feel trusted, and then we're going to lead a family into a culture of communication and cooperation. And so, by children, by nature their own, they're going to test limits. They're going to push boundaries. They're evolving little human beings that are learning how to be adult human beings. And, so it's important to kind of approach this in as I mentioned earlier about my children, I always refer to them as my growth partners. So these are growth opportunities that you are partnering up together with your child. And so, when a limit is being tested, what's going on? What need is not being met? How can you get beneath that behavior to see what they might be kind of sending that message to you? And how can you, as the adult, regulate your nervous system so that you can co-regulate? Because if a child is storming and having big emotions, that's not the time to that's not the time to teach. They're not able to access the logical part of their brain. When they're co-regulated, when they're calm, that's when those teachable moments happen. And so up and up and up you go when you're able to regulate yourself and your child is able to grow and get their needs met, then your confidence goes up and their confidence goes up and up you both go together. And so I believe that there's no better opportunity in the world to allow our children to be our growth partners, really by taking the challenge of doing the work on becoming the model that we want to be, that we can meet them and their needs in the most fulfilling way. And there's really no better person in the world to become better for than for our own children. And so if you would like to dive deeper and learn more, just reach out to me. My website, my phone number is there. I would love to hear any big takeaways from this presentation. Of course, any Q&As, we can definitely do that. But I want to thank you so much for your time. I can go ahead and stop sharing. And then if anybody wants to share their big takeaways, that would be awesome.
You can unmute yourself to ask a question or just comment, or you can just use the chat if you want, if that's easier for you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Anything that stood out, anything you're taking away? I have a lot of work to do on myself. Thank you. My under two decided this was not the night, 7 p.m. Oh, this will be recorded and sent out. So if you had to go, we totally get it. I loved it. Oh, thank you. I definitely have some work to do. Ideas on motivating a very unmotivated child. Okay, I'll go back to that one. Working on making progress through modeling and regulation. I really appreciate the concept of co-regulation. Thank you very much. Very inspired. I love the children as growth partners. Yes. How do you handle two different parent approaches? Okay. All right, so let's go to the first question. I just lost it. Where'd it go? Oh, the idea of motivating a very unmotivated child. I would say connection is such a powerful tool. Connecting with your child, and what that means is finding ways to connect with your child in what they enjoy. So just to give you an example, like connection isn't really just what I want to do. It's what how my child feels seen, heard, and valued. For my 14-year-old, I can just share really quick. He loves to debate topics and argue and talk sports and just different topics. That's how he feels connected. That's how he feels seen, heard. That's not my idea, but I've learned to kind of accept that that is how he feels connected. So connection is how the other person feels seen, heard, and valued. So when you're connecting with your child, try to find ways of how what works for them, and our children's brains are very different than ours as an adult. So what works for them, works for them, and just roll with it. And so once you build that connection, then you're able to kind of see what interests are, and what kind of sparks their curiosity, and then just take it from there. um, and help, that might help with the motivation piece. Trying to think what the other one was. There was another question. Oh, I think it was about the two parenting styles. I think I remember seeing that one. So that's a very common thing when you have two different styles. Maybe one is more of an authoritative parent, another one is more permissive. Um, and so one of the things that I do in my program is I focus. I mean, obviously, if both parents can work and on the coaching together, that's ideal. But if only one parent can actually attend, then we focus on that person, because essentially when they're learning more tools and strategies and ways to kind of communicate more effectively with their child, they become the model in the family. And so that other person starts to realize, well, there's more tools, because I'm seeing the responses, and I'm seeing kind of how this person is handling situations. And so I always like imagine like a toolbox, right? You're kind of given the tools that your parents pass on. But how many times do you have a chance to sort through those tools and really say, you know what? Well, this one I don't want anymore. This one's not helping. I want some new tools in my toolbox, in my parenting toolbox. So I hope that kind of helps you with that idea, and that approach. Love the power over, power under. It was an eye opener. All good strategies. I will try my best to implement how to get through daily tasks while allowing autonomy. I think choice is a really great option for children. Not without knowing the age of your child, allowing your child a choice. So if you have somewhere to go or something to do, allowing them a choice. Would you like to put your shoes on, or would you like some help, or would you like to help me carry this to the car, or just allowing choice for children, I think is a sense they don't have a lot, they have control of, they don't have a lot, they have say of. So allowing choice for children is really empowering, and it kind of fulfills that autonomy, that need for autonomy. I love learning more about how our brains work. So mirror neurons was the new term. We'll be doing more research on that. How to educate my partner to be on the same boat. I'm curious if you have any recommendations. I have a hypothesis that my daughter is way more attention starving and escalating attention seeking behavior because her little brother was born shortly after COVID lockdown. So when maternity leave ended, I have to divide my time between her and brother. What can I do to make her feel she gets the attention she needs, or so yeah, so that's a big change in her life. Not to mention COVID was a huge change for everybody, but then she also has a new member in the family. And so you're noticing that she's kind of struggling with that transition and wanting your attention. I would maybe suggest carving out some time, some one-on-one time with her. Maybe some sort of, depending on her age. I don't know if I missed the age, but she's probably, I would imagine, maybe young, 2, 3, 4. Some sort of visual reminder where she knows, because children at that young age don't really have a concept of time. But if they have something visual, like a rhythm chart that kind of shows um, what is happening in the day, and then the part where they get to have time with you, that might be give her some comfort knowing that you haven't forgotten about the time together, that it's going to happen soon, but time wise she's not going to really understand what 5-10 minutes means, right? So maybe some sort of visual, rhythm chart, or something where she can kind of see when is it her time. I would also try to get her involved with different activities, whether it's cooking or setting the table, or just feeling that independence, and that she is needed and appreciated for the help. I know a lot of the littles really love to help around the house and things like that. Um, how to educate so my partner be on the same boat most of the time. Behave his behavior triggers behaviors in my children. Yeah, so sometimes if one of the partners is reactive, um, one of the things, and it's a tool that I teach in my program. It's a thermometer, and it literally has white on the top, and then it's red, orange, green. And so, as a family, collectively, you can sit down and you can talk about what does your body feel like when you slipping into the yellow, right? So you're the green is where you're calm, and then you're just kind of rising into the yellow. And what does it feel when you're in the orange? And what does it feel when you're in the red? And then white is like, whew. And so having that conversation about what that feels like, or what are some things that kind of trigger you to be in that state, is really help. It's a great tool to track your nervous system. And so if you have a partner that goes from green to white, or green to red very easily, that's where that really that emotional intelligence, it sounds like there could be some emotional immaturity, not by fault of them, but maybe they weren't taught that. And so there needs to be some growth there to help, as a family, just be open. you know um, you could be washing the dishes and just say, "Whew, mommy feels like she's slipping into the yellow and orange because I've had to kind of give a couple reminders about, you know, unpacking the backpacks." And so that's just kind of like embedding that in your family as building that emotional intelligence, that understanding of where everyone's at, and how all needs are valid, whether you're an adult or a child. Everyone's needs are valid in the home. And so I would say just building that emotional maturity and intelligence around tracking your nervous system. Let's see, I think there was one more. We did a photo album for our daughter to see that we did the same things with us doing with her baby sibling. That really helped her feel loved. Oh, that's so sweet. Those family albums, and I remember my little one had one and he would carry it around everywhere and just love to point out. And they do have those books where you can add your child's name into the narrative. I remember we had one of those and they really enjoyed that. Um, that's awesome. That's a great idea.
Well, if you think of any more questions or you want to reach out to Michelle, I know she already shared her website, but I'll just link it here in the chat in case anybody wants to get in touch. And this has been recorded, so please reach out to your Montessori school for the recording, or you can also reach out to Michelle because I'll be sharing the link to the recording with her as well. Um, so if you missed the first half, or if you just want to reference this later on, you can watch the recording. Thank you so much to Michelle for such a lovely presentation. Lots of great takeaways. I hope everyone who joined us took some valuable information. It seemed like a lot of you mentioned that you are taking away some good points. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Michelle, for a great presentation.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure.
We hope to see all the parents back next week for another parenting session. Until then, take care and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Have a good night.
You as well. Bye. Bye, everyone.